Of course, literally 2 days after our last podcast, James Gunn came out and announced a bunch of stuff. He couldn't have done that earlier. Well, so here we go again, discussing the announcements. This is the podcast of champions, and I'm your host, Grandmaster. With me is a powerful panel made up of the finest champions Sakar has to offer. Let me introduce them to you. First up, we have Mr. Taylor First. How are you doing, man?
Doing great.
And we have not 100% today, Merv. How are you?
I'm all right.
Okay, good to hear. Hopefully good enough to talk about DC and their announcements. And sitting in his throne room in Hades, from the great beyond, voice only, Mr. Lord Death Man. How are you?
I'm doing well today, supercharged for the discussion.
I wonder if there's a pun in there. I don't know. So, on Tuesday, James Gunn came out with a video announcing what the plan is for DC Studio. He, Saffron, and a bunch of others have been mapping out an 8 to 10 year plan for the future of the franchise or franchises. Because Batman 2 is still happening. Happy with that, actually, but it's not part of the new DCU. The 2023 movies may or may not be a part of the new DCU or the old DCEU. Characters will develop over movies, TV, and even animation. What we do know is that the first chapter of the new DCU will be called Gods and Monsters. To be fair, I'm a bit lost already, but I'm not a comic book reader, but I am interested in CBM universes. I really hope DCU Studios will pull it off and reel me in and clear my confusion all up. Luckily for you, we do have comic book readers on the panel and people with decades of experience. So let's see if we can shed some light into the darkness. So I asked the questions to the champions, and the questions are, well, do we like what had been announced? Do we have any favorite projects, things we don't care for? Well, last time we talked about carryovers. Well, we do have them. Amanda Waller will still be played by Viola Davis. Team Peacemaker is there. Is that a smart move or not? Several franchises. Is that a good move? The DCU seem to not want to die, at least not without a fight. And you know what? What belongs to what? We'll try to figure that out as well. And then, of course, we have characters that will be developing on multiple platforms and in multiple forms, animation and live action. Is that a good thing or not? I mean, will everybody follow TV, animation, movies, or will they get lost along the way? So that's, again, a lot to unpack. And I want to start with our resident comic book reader, Mr. Lord Deathman. What are your thoughts on all the announcements we got?
Yes. Well, I want to start, I don't want to turn this into a rant. I don't want to go off topic. So I really sat down and tried to think about 3 things that I think are wrong with this slate. So obviously I'm starting off with a posture that as much as I like James Gunn, as much as I like his leadership style, as much as I think he's a creative genius, this slate is a disappointment. No 2 ways about it. The 3 things that are wrong with it are, well, 1, it has a lot of duplication in it. So we're still getting more than one of any given character. 2, it doesn't appear to be connected. So he calls it Chapter 1, he calls it Gods and Monsters, but when you look at the properties as a whole or individually, they don't seem to have any kind of connectivity. And I just want to say that I'm not holding him to the standard of Marvel, where he has to tell an ongoing story throughout 50 billion films. But, one of the promises, I think, of this slate is that we were going to get to something that would look like an ongoing saga or thread that would follow through these stories. So we don't have connectivity, we don't have duplication, and I think the third and most important problem with this slate is it's not a hard reset. And again, I'll caveat that by saying a hard reset might have just been not realistic. As much as I wanted it, as much as I heard a lot of the fandom and the media said, "Oh, well, this is going to be a complete failure if it's not a hard reset." I do want to say that I understood how unrealistic it would be to hard reset everything and get rid of all these actors and close out all these franchises immediately. But at the same time, I am putting it as a problem on the list. So that's my overall feelings about the slate, Grandmaster. I don't know if you want me to get into individual properties, but I'd sure like to hear what the other champions have to say.
Yeah, we can talk about that a little bit later. I will just throw one of the questions in there and we do another round. Merv, not a hard reset. Several Batman running around. It's to me, I'm lost. I'm not a comic book reader. I know you are. I know you're a big fan of the Booster Gold property for one thing. So you must be happy you get a show.
Yeah, as far as the slate of released projects or upcoming whatever, it's just kind of a mixed bag all across the board. So it's hard to like really say, oh, it's awesome or oh, it's terrible, because like some projects I'm really excited for and other ones, like I don't want to get into specifics yet, but there's just it's all over the map. There's a horror movie, there's animated shows, there's TV shows, there's movies, there's dual Batmans potentially, and it's a lot to take in right away, especially when you don't really know what the plan is and how everything's going to connect. And I'll just say, like, I it sounds like I might be the most optimistic person on this panel, honestly, as far as the DC comes across, and I think it's because I'm kind of like getting tired of not connected universes, but of that being the only point to anything. I really want to enjoy these movies and these projects, and that goes for Marvel and every other connected universe out there on their own as an individual project, as much as I like the continuity with other projects that are going on. So just seeing some of these titles out here and some of these ideas that are floating around, and just the fact that some of them are very different than stuff we've seen. You got new character in Booster Gold, you've got the Green Lanterns getting a TV show. Like, some of that stuff like really excites me to see it come to fruition. The Authority, which most people haven't even heard of, and I was spectacular that they actually greenlit that. But I'm half excited and half not excited, depending on the project. And I just really hope that they can nail one project at a time and do the best there. I'm optimistic now, and that's until we hit a speed bump or whatever, and then it's like, oh, it's just like DCEU all over again. It's terrible, but as of right now, I'm hopeful. Maybe I'm the most hopeful one on this panel right now.
Okay. Well, Taylor, I will get a little hate for this, but I was not on board when Marvel started their universe back in 2008. Did they announce all 6 movies at once, or was it they just announced a few and then we found out later they were connected and building up to something? I can't remember, but how do you see this announcement? 10 projects or so that are going to build up to something. They even have an overarching name. How do you feel?
I believe Marvel announced the first movie and said that they were planning other movies, but I think they kept it pretty vague up until Iron Man actually got released. Mm-hmm. My feelings on this, are they out of their minds? I did this for effect, by the way. Okay. I agree with Lord Deathman. I also agree with what Merv said. Where to begin? Last time we spoke about this last week, I told them exactly what they needed to do. And I said they weren't going to do any of the things I said. Okay, fine. But I didn't think they could be more than 180 degrees opposite of what I said. But somehow they managed to. They're of course, they're drawing from the modern age of comics, which nobody reads. It's written for a tiny niche audience that buys fewer comics than tickets are sold for any Marvel movie in one weekend. All right, that's more tickets are sold than there are comics sold in North America in a year to a Marvel movie in the first weekend, because no one's is reading these comics. But James Gunn must love them. So again, why aren't people reading them? Well, one thing, they're complicated. You have to devote a lot of time to follow these stories. Two, they're not uplifting. They're dark. They're depressing sometimes violent, sometimes sexual. I mean, there's a lot of stuff in these stories that they're drawing from that are not your traditional superhero comics that, you know, most people grew up with or watching on TV or reading, you know, as a kid. And it's not their uplifting superhero, which doesn't mean you can't have a great action-packed story where a superhero reaches, you know, very low lows and, you know, things like that. But the tone, you know, that people who make movies, they understand tone. And there's a tone between, you know, Indiana Jones, who, you know, almost dies multiple times, but the crowd's standing up and cheering at the end when he succeeds. And then there's the tone between some of these types of superhero movies where, yeah, he almost dies all the, you know, multiple times, and he barely succeeds by the skin of his teeth, and you're left wondering, was it all worth it? And it's just going to get worse in the next movie. You know, that seems to be where they're headed in this. And when we can go through each project individually. But I agree 100%, you know, not just us, but almost everyone said they need to make a clean break. And I really don't know what's so hard about making a clean break with the former DCEU. Just say it's over. Aquaman 2 is the last movie in that franchise, and we're starting new. And I hate that they're using the worn out, lazy, flashpoint, reset, multiple universes thing so that we can do anything we want and just say, well, you know, Flashpoint, multiverse. we weren't actually going to use some Jason Momoa, but now we're going to, and we can because, you know, multiverse, Flashpoint. It's all changed. And no, the stuff that he did in Justice League, that didn't happen. But the stuff that he did in Aquaman 1, that did happen. You know, again, it's too complicated. They should have started from scratch, from fresh, with a new story, a new perspective. But now they just muddied the water. Nobody knows what's real and what isn't. And I don't think they're going to spell it out for us because they want to be able to pull out stuff out of their hat if they need to. You know, they're not going to like post a handbook of this was erased and this wasn't erased by Flashpoint. You know, yeah, we erased Henry Cavill. We know that. Probably erased Dwayne Johnson, but maybe not. Maybe we'll get that Black Adam sequel. Maybe we'll get that Birds of Prey sequel. Who knows? Meanwhile, we're supposed to be focusing on this new slate and this new shared universe. And I get that they have ambition, they have big plans, they want to do a large shared universe, but take it slow. Show us you can do one movie right before you start talking about cartoons and video games and you know, TV shows and everything else. And you know, I'm not saying, you know, they can only announce one project, but I think the slate they're announcing now is a little bit ambitious for so early in this process. And we're not even going to see the first movie until 2025. And I understand how long it takes to make a movie, but I was hoping like Christmas 2024 might be their first movie, but now it's July of 2025. But we're going to get Couch Commandos with Frankenstein cartoon first. So yay, hey, that'll take. And I'm actually looking forward to that project. I think it's probably going to be a lot of fun. What is that, your kickoff for your new DC universe? And then Waller. Oh, yeah. So basically, you know, season 2 of Peacemaker, just without Peacemaker, but James Gunn's wife is still there. So they should have recast her as Black Canary, but I digress. She's going to stay whatever character she is, and Waller's still going to be there because, I mean, I get it. You don't want to give up Viola Davis. She's a bankable star. I just think too much, too fast, and I think the tone is gonna let them down. And we'll get into the details as we go on.
Yeah. Well, Taylor, don't you think they just don't want to announce the death of the DCEU because they want to reel in that 2023 movie box office money? And if they do, then nobody cares about those 4 movies. They don't make enough money to actually make the first movie for the DCU. And yeah, while we're at it, can I have some things you are interested in from the slate they did announce? If you are interested in something at all.
Well, yes, I agree that it's very, very possible that they're only saying this stuff could come back because they want people to watch the movies in 2023. But they really, I mean, they didn't even say it in a subtle way. I mean, when Gunn was doing his video, he said Blue Beetle leads directly into Aquaman, and Aquaman leads straight into our next DCU movie, and Shazam is in his own corner, but it fits real well in our DC universe. So if that is the case, and it could very well be that they're only saying that because they want people to go to those movies, and they have no intention of bringing any of these characters back, then they're being kind of dishonest about it. I'm going to see those movies anyway. I don't care if it's not part of the next universe. Like I said, I wanted a clean break, start a new universe, but
okay. But I like before, I was advocating before the James Gunn situation and Peter Safran. Don't forget him. Safran Gunn situation happened at Warner Brothers DC. I was advocating for that studio just to make good standalone movies. Because that's also a way to go. You don't need a connected universe. You can just make good standalone movies and tell a story. And you can even have like a trilogy or 4 movies that are connected and tell a bigger story. But you don't need an overarching universe where everything is happening, that everything is what's happening in a movie is also in that universe. You don't need that. But that's what they're going for.
They could have built up to that a little bit slower, but I mean, I guess they know everyone knows that's what they're shooting for. But real quick, here's something that Safran said, speaking about Wonder Woman, Aquaman, and Shazam, and Blue Beetle. These 4 movies are terrific. There's no reason why any of the characters or the actors that play in those characters are not part of the DCU. There's nothing that prohibits that from happening.
Well, if you take the first Wonder Woman movie, you have to take the second one as well. And I think you have a problem in that case. Although I think this is a sensitive topic on Sukar. But so you don't have any specific projects you say, yes, that's piqued my interest right off the bat?
Oh, I mean, a lot of them several of them piqued my interest. Lanterns piques my interest, but here's what they're saying about Lanterns. Our vision for this is very much in the vein of True Detective. They could have said Starsky and Hutch, but no, True Detective, one of the most brutal, self-serious, gruesome murder mystery shows ever. And we're going to have guys with magic rings in that vein. That's what I'm talking about. I'd love to see a Lanterns show, but in the vein of True Detective. Batman, Brave and the Bold, Damian Wayne, who was a little son of a bitch. This is what James Gunn said. Damian Wayne, who was a little son of a bitch, introduced Batman to a son he never knew existed, a murderous tween raised by assassins. Sounds like fun for the whole family, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. Merv, you can talk about projects you like as well, but isn't that also the problem with DC a bit in the last 10, 15 years or so, that everything has to be like the Nolan trilogy, grounded, dark, grim, realistic, and again, I'm not a comic book reader, but I do know that DC has, just like Marvel, a wide spread of tones and worlds and universes, multiverses even, which are totally different from each other, and not everything works in a realistic, grounded way. And they seems like they are hanging on to that tone because that makes money somehow. It's not good, but it makes money.
Yeah, I absolutely don't understand it. Because the appeal, like the dark and gritty for certain characters makes a lot of sense. It doesn't make any sense to have your Green Lanterns be dark and gritty. It doesn't make any sense to have Flash be dark and gritty. These are not dark, serious characters. These are fun superhero, like colorful. Every panel is filled with color in these comics. It's not drab, it's not morose. Like it, whenever they get to those points, it's because they're up against something ridiculous, and it's bad. But like 90% of the comics that I've read that feature some of these characters are just fun. You know, it's a lot of fun. It's superhero comics. It's supposed to be mostly fun, unless you're dealing with, again, like I said, you know, something that's a little more macabre, so to speak. Maybe Lord Deathman's like that. I don't know. I never heard of the character, but yeah, I don't know why there's like a shyness, like it's at least from a film going perspective, to have a variation in tone, in vibe, in atmosphere, and all that stuff among various products. Like within the same universe, even you know, you can't have Superman in Metropolis it be all nighttime. That's Gotham City. That's a whole different area. Even though they come together at times, you can't combine those two, you know, and you can't just it's not vice versa. But coming back to these projects, I guess there's a couple that I'm more interested in than not. You already mentioned it, Booster Gold. I just really like the premise of the character, and from what, and I'm not even like the most well-versed Booster Gold like historian or anything like that. My knowledge of him mostly comes from the New 52, which was like, you know, in between reset buttons in DC Comics for for like 5 years, like 10 years ago. Um, but I liked him there. He was immediately like I never heard of him, and then I picked up a book of his, and it left an immediate fun impression. And he should not be drab or down or gray. He should be fun. You should be laughing. It doesn't need to all be jokes. It doesn't need to be like fart humor or anything like that. But you should have a good time watching a Booster Gold show. If you're not, then they screwed up. I'll just put it that way, put it bluntly like that. The other one, I agree with Taylor. Lanterns intrigues me, but it also, I'm so concerned. One, the True Detective comment, I agree. If it's if it's anything like True Detective, I'm gonna hate it because it's not gonna feel like a Green Lantern project at all. True Detective was, like you said, it was a downer. It was way too serious and way too drab. And if you can slap a Green Lantern label on that, that doesn't make it Green Lantern. You'd be better off picking a different character, picking two different characters. You could pick the Question, and it would fit that better than Green Lantern would. That kind of a product. The other thing that baffled me was that they said it would be a terrestrial show, meaning that it's going to be mostly Earth based. And I understand that from a start, but when you go out of your way to say that, if you set that standard, you're almost cutting yourself off from like 90% of what makes the Green Lanterns fun, which is that they're an intergalactic space force. If there's no intergalactic part about it, I might as well be watching Cops. You know what I mean? Like it's if you're not dealing with aliens or, you know, the other Lantern cores, which are all fantastic. Well, not all of them, but most of them are fantastic. All the bad ones are really fun. But if they don't introduce stuff like that, then they're really like missing a great way to pull people in my mind. You know, those are some of the most fun comics I've read. Um, the third one is I'm mostly curious about is the Authority, because I think the Authority is gonna fit that drab, crappy tone. But I've heard some interesting theories on how it's gonna play out. That it'll almost be like the precursor to the Justice League, and that like their embodiment of if you don't know the Authority, they're very powerful, but they have a questionable moral fiber, and they're all kind of like they're not without the ability to just like beat a criminal to a pulp if they feel that criminal deserves it. It's happened in the comics. So them compared to like Superman's morality, they're much more on the darker side. If they are a precursor to the Justice League, it makes a little bit of sense that it could almost act as like their first villain, so to speak, if that's the route they go. But if they're going to try to play up the Authority as the heroes, it's going to be a little bit like, it's going to feel like the DCEU. It's going to feel like Zack Snyder's Justice League all over again. So I'm curious where they go there, and I'm interested to see the characters adapted, but I'm also kind of scared that it's going to feel the same. And I mean, that's my top three. I don't want to get too far down the list, but yeah, that's my top three most interested.
Okay, I'm not gonna put some salt in a wound. So, Lord Deathman, we don't get a Lord Deathman announcement at all.
You know,
but
and that
to be fair, I'm also a bit sad because we didn't get Captain Carrot either. So, what are your favorite projects you're looking forward to? And actually, what projects you say they shouldn't even have announced and not even touch?
Yeah, here we go. First off, I want to say that when you look at the fan reaction to this slate, we even ran a poll on Sakar, which you can check out at sakar.freeforums.net. We ran a poll there. And I also looked at Twitter. I looked all over social. I looked at comments on articles. We're back to the same thing with DC fans. All they want is a Batman and a Superman film. And that's it. All this other stuff would be kind of nice to have, or I don't care about it, or whatever. But once you get back down to brass tacks with 90% of the DC fandom, just give me a Batman movie and give me a Superman movie. I find that endlessly fascinating. But on to every single pick that I have on my list of 5 items for the DC slate that I think might work with James Gunn, I could easily make the counter argument for why they won't work, which says something about the slate itself. So my first one is Batman, the Brave and the Bold. I'm not interested in the Reeves Batman, and I know that has a lot of fans. It's really an offshoot of what Nolan does. Reeves has come out and said that unapologetically. It is an extension of what Nolan did with the character, and everything that I do in this Reeves verse is going to be about how grounded I can make it. And when you say grounded, I assume he means how close to reality could I make this if it was, happening in the real world. And I wish him all the best of luck, and I hope the fans get what they want out of that. Zero interest on my part. Batman, the Brave and the Bold sounds like a way to change the status quo for Batman in the movies. I'm not too hot on the introduction of Damian Wayne. Damian Wayne's a great character, but if you're doing this in some kind of chronology that makes sense, Jason Todd, Dick Grayson, there were other Robins that were not psychotic that came before Damian Wayne. So I have no idea why you'd want to just act as if Damian Wayne was the first Robin, or somehow marginalize or fridge the other Robins that came before. I don't know why they keep doing that in live action. And this is coming from someone who doesn't even really care about Robin one way or the other. I'm completely neutral on the idea. But again, Batman Brave and the Bold seems like a way that you might be able to change the status quo for the character in live action. I like the idea of lanterns. So put a check mark there. I see a lot of people saying, oh, you know what? I don't want any streaming shows. I don't want anything to be like a television show or a multi-episodic thing. I'm not really sure where that criticism comes from, other than people hating streaming services. But the truth of the matter is, with the Green Lantern IP, you have multiple Green Lanterns. Kyle Stewart, you have Hal Jordan, you have Hal Jordan and John Stewart. So Green Lanterns as a property in the comic books has already split its fandom. There's so many people who could pick a Green Lantern, human Green Lanterns, and Alan Scott. So it kind of does lend itself to the TV episodic format if you are trying to do justice to all of these Green Lanterns in some way. There's no way you can make a movie that's a 2-hour presentation or 90 minutes that would do that. So I think TV is the right way to go, honestly. The problem, as Merv pointed out, is this dark tone of, True Detective. I was like, that's got to be the dumbest thing I ever heard for a Green Lantern show. But I don't know. Maybe James Gunn knows something that I don't. I don't think of Green Lanterns as detectives. I think of them as cops, and there's a difference in the law enforcement strata when you're using that metaphor. I don't see Green Lanterns going around investigating crimes. They patrol. When they find crimes, they deal with them. So anyway, next one would be Paradise Lost. Again, an interesting property, an interesting way to go with Wonder Woman, going back to before Wonder Woman. I guess looking at some palace intrigue. He says Game of Thrones is what you need to be thinking of when you're thinking of what we want to do with Paradise Lost. On the one hand, it sounds interesting. I like it as a TV show, but on the other hand, okay, so it's an island that full of women that live peacefully together. Why would they be at each other's throats, and what are they trying to sort of get at? I wrote a post on Sakar about how if this involves the sort of contest between the Amazons to determine who would become the envoy or the ambassador to man, then that might be an interesting premise for why they might be at conflict with each other. But this is it's supposed to be a paradise and not Paradise Lost. That just seems like a weird modernization of it, and it puts women at each other's throats, which I don't think anyone in the politically correct sort of SJW world is going to be happy about. Like, why are these LGBTQ, and they have to take that part of it head on too. I don't know how Amazons reproduce, but we're probably going to see a lot of same-sex marriages and families. Totally fine with that, but there are a lot of people that are not going to be.
Can I go to Taylor for his follow-up on your Paradise Lost, and then I go back to you for the other two?
Absolutely.
Taylor.
Yes, Game of Thrones. the most violent, rapiest, nudiest show of the last 10 years. So it's Game of Thrones meets Real Housewives of Paradise Island. The one good thing is they'll probably save a lot of money on wardrobe because they're all going to be naked the whole time. And I am putting my name in as casting director for that show if Gunn is interested. But holy, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Wonder Woman grew up on Paradise Island. She grew up perfect because she was living in a perfect place. Now, okay, right. Maybe it didn't start perfect. And of course, nothing is 100% perfect. And maybe it didn't start perfect. Maybe it had a rough beginning, and that's what they're going to go for. But like Lord Deathman said, half of it's going to be walking on eggshells, and the other half is going to be stuff you don't want to show your mother. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. Can we predict how many episodes in before we get a lesbian incest affair? That's also like with a huge age difference. We've got a 14-year-old girl and like a 103-year-old woman starting a relationship.
Well, may I throw in that if the writing is good and if they make a good story out of it and cast properly. Well, I'm just going to throw it out there. If you don't watch The Last of Us and you saw episode 3, you know exactly what I'm talking about. I will be totally fine with Paradise Lost having a lesbian incest, whatever. Lord Deathman, go on.
Okay, let me wrap it up. Let me wrap it up with these two. Superman Legacy, I'm definitely excited for. I just think because we haven't had a Superman film in a long time, and Gunn has shown that his influences and the references that he wants to pick up are more brighter, optimistic Superman. All-star Superman. That's great source material to pick from. Way to go, champ, is what I'll say to him on that one. And then finally, The Authority. This one is just kind of like, because I want to see the train wreck that the Authority is going to become. I'm like, yeah, let's make that just to get Lord Deathman to give out a few he's about this one. It's so weird to make the Authority, because I really think they're falling back into the trap of old DC thinking, and that the Authority is supposed to do so many things for so many different kinds of fans. One, introduce something new. Two, occupy a place where the boys is right now in terms of changing the conversation about superhero TV shows. Three, they're probably trying to put some spotlight onto Jim Lee, an incredibly influential source, creator and leader in the DC hierarchy, who hasn't had any representation with regards to his work in the DC universe. He's an artist and not a writer, but the Authority was really something that was bought over from the Wildstorm imprint, which then DC acquired. So I think that's a way to kind of get the Jeff Johns-ness off of this and bring in Jim Lee, but that's really a theory. As for properties that I think could have just like been aborted at birth, I don't need to see another Swamp Thing movie. My God, I love Swamp Thing, but man, we tried it 6 or 7 times already, and people just don't dig it. All those films and the TV shows have a cult following for people who really love what Alan Moore did with the character or love the spirit of the character. Marvel has tried Man-Thing movies. Jimmy Two Guns. If you don't get that, you shouldn't be making a Swamp Thing movie. I'm kind of worried. Needed to replace that with Black Orchid, essentially the same thing, but a wholly new and dynamic character to do it with. Waller, no, don't make that.
Yeah, well, now you mentioned Waller. Waller is a property we actually explicitly all said last week is dangerous, and we actually don't want it. They have carryovers. I mean, like I mentioned in my opening, Viola Davis will be continuing to play this character. She's gonna team up with Team Peacemaker. Not maybe Peacemaker himself, but Team Peacemaker. So you get carryovers. Is Waller connected to the DCU or DCEU, or is it a corner of its own? This is where I get lost, basically.
Yeah, it's so problematic, Grandmaster. We need another show to discuss it. He really should have just, like, I don't know if this is Peacemaker season 2. Is it Waller? Will we get so many questions come out of it that he should have said, Viola, love you, goodbye. And the last one that I think should not have been on this list is Creature Commandos. I don't know if he, fondled an intern and is being blackmailed. I have no idea why this obscure property from the 80s that has exactly 0 fans, maybe even -0. I don't know a Creature Commandos fan. I've seen the comic books. I've seen them on shelves. They usually end up in like the 50-cent bin where you can kind of grab a handful or like as many comic books as you can fit in your hand for $3. They usually end up in that bin, and then 50% of them will be Creature Commando comic books. I guarantee you. So those are the things I liked and disliked from the slate.
Okay, I think Taylor is a Creature Commandos fan because he immediately put his hands up. But how do you feel about Viola Davis, Team Peacemaker, and carryovers from whatever universe to the new universe, or they don't do that, or they continue in the other universe? Do you have any thing that makes sense so I can get it?
No. As I said before, they should not have any carryovers. That's just me. Maybe they'll do a great job and it'll all work out. But from my point of view, at this point, they should not have any carryovers. I liked Peacemaker. In fact, I loved that show. It was a ball. But because of the old DCEU, everything was so loosely connected. It didn't really matter if it didn't really fit with the rest of the universe. So I could have a ball with Peacemaker. And I knew it wasn't going to affect anything because I know they never connected anything in the DCU, so it didn't matter. But now if they're actually going to be connecting stuff, they can't, they shouldn't be carrying over stuff from the old thing, first of all. And then they need to have some site. I understand that different movies within one universe can have different tones, sure, but there has to be some sameness that they are in fact the same universe. We won't, I'm glad they're doing Elseworlds stuff too. That's fine. Batman, Matt Reeves, Batman, and Joker, Joaquin Phoenix, and they mentioned Teen Titans Go. I'm sure Harley Quinn cartoon, if it's still around in 2025, will be an Elseworlds project. That's fine. I'm glad they're doing that, and I'm glad they're going to put the label Elseworlds on it. But in their main universe, there has to be some consistency. And like Lord Deathman was saying, well, let me talk about Couch Commandos here first, all right?
Creature Commandos.
Again, I bet it's going to be a really fun cartoon. But it just boggles my mind that they are so into this that they are casting voice actors that they know are going to play these characters in live action. They actually have a plan to bring these characters into live action, and it's so important that they're actually casting voice actors who they're going to put on contract for what, 5-6 years by the time we see these characters in live action. It boggles the mind that they're putting this much thought into that, as opposed to Superman. I'll talk about Superman in just a second. But real quick on the Authority. Yeah, Lord Deathman was right. The Authority is it's another. It doesn't even belong in the same universe as DCU. It was created by another company as a deconstruction, and God knows we've seen enough deconstructions of superheroes. All right, we've already got The Boys. We've already got Watchmen. All right, we don't need another deconstruction. And these guys gonna be end up being villains. Okay, I guess, but there's plenty of villains already in the DC universe they could have drawn on to do that. So I don't know if they're going to be villains or not. But one of the things they said about them, once again, is that dark, the world sucks attitude that I'm seeing throughout this whole thing. They said they think the Authority thinks the world is broken and they need to fix it. That's not what superheroes are. Superheroes think the world is good, not perfect. Nothing is perfect. They think the world is good and they want to protect it. They don't think it's broken and they need to change it. But again, that's a deconstruction. Okay, fine. But I don't like deconstructions. I watch The Boys because it's hilarious. I hate The Watchmen. I've always hated Watchmen. I hate that first movie. Oh my God. I paid $1.50 for it and I complained that I was overcharged for that thing. I bought it out of the bargain bin. So anyway, Watchmen. And I also agree with Lord Deathman. I am a big fan of the first Swamp Thing movie back in the 80s. It was a ball. It was so much fun. Even Roger Ebert liked it. He loved it when it came out. But it's a cult classic. Very, very few fans. And everything after that, the sequel to that was a monstrosity. The 90s series on USA Network, no one even remembers that one except me. The series that they just tried to do on these HBO Max or whatever got canceled after one episode. That's got to be a record. One episode aired and they canceled the series. And then there was the cartoon that nobody remembers. So I like the character. I wish they would do him right. I have a feeling this one, they're going to go hard horror, which is okay if they go hard horror. But I'm more worried about is if they have to adapt it to live action into movies. Because in the new comic books, Swamp Thing is this kind of over the top, he's not just a swamp monster. He's connected to the world and he's everywhere and all this esoteric philosophical stuff. I want to see a monster in the swamp fight another monster in the swamp, and that'll be really cool. Okay, I'm all for that. Finally, Superman Legacy. First of all, they showed all these pictures of these things, and they showed that picture of Superman sitting on a cloud. That picture didn't even look like it fit in the same universe as all the other pictures that they showed. It's like, this is going to be their one. See, yeah, we're doing 4-quadrant movies. We're doing Superman. But let's just take real quick what they said about that. He is kindness in a world that thinks kindness is old-fashioned. What world is that? Planet Emo? Who the heck thinks kindness is old-fashioned? Have you ever heard anyone say, yeah, I don't do kindness. Kindness is old-fashioned. I'm better than that. No, you know who thinks that way? Hollywood edgelords like James Gunn and the people in his bubble who think everyone outside of his bubble are horrible people who don't like kindness. So they're going to portray Superman as some kind of anachronism in this horrible world. Just like the horrible world that Zack Snyder made in Batman vs. Superman, where you know, they saved the world, and you thought to yourself, well, why would I want to live in that world that they just saved? You know, so I'm afraid it's going to be like that. I hope I'm wrong. I hope they do a really bang up Superman movie, because that would be great. But again, all these little things they're saying are indicating to me that it's going to have that cynical tone to it, you know, and James Gunn was known for it. And in the right, with the right project, that tone works great, you know. James Gunn did a movie called Super. I love that movie. James Gunn did Slither. That's another great movie. And now in Guardians of the Galaxy, James Gunn wasn't driving that train. All right, he was directing, and he did a good job, but he was very much controlled by Kevin Feige. So the tone was set. He tried to destroy Scooby-Doo when someone reeled him in, and the Scooby-Doo movie, and said, "No, you're not making Shaggy a drug addict, you dumbass." Okay, you know. But that movie got all screwed up. So anyway, here's the problem. Now they may come out and say, "Look, we're distinguishing ourselves from Marvel. We're going for a more mature story. We're going for a more mature audience. We're not afraid to do hard R movies. We're not making kiddie stuff." Okay, fine. You know what else you're not making? Money. Because 2022, I just looked it up. On 2022, the biggest box office R-rated movie of 2022 was Bullet Train, and it made $239 million worldwide. Less than Black Adam money. Okay? R-rated movies are not going to pull in that kind of money that Warner Brothers is going to be pouring into these products. And it ain't out of the goodness of their hearts. They want a return on this investment. All right? So here's the thing. Oh, okay, we're making this for adults. Okay, well, here's the thing, though. If it's a PG-13 movie that the whole family can enjoy, you got mom, dad, and 4 kids buying tickets. If it's only for adults, well, the 4 kids' tickets ain't getting sold, and mom has to stay home with the kids. So maybe you're getting 1 out of 6 tickets being sold to dad, okay, if he even cares. All right, so, you know, take off your director hat, take off your visionary hat, Gunn, and put on your studio head hat. And remember, you got to bring in some bucks with this stuff.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's why, well, one of my criticisms of DC is always where Marvel is imperfect men walking in or getting powers and doing some good change, but still have the moral dilemma of imperfect men. DC is usually gods walking among men. The only exception, of course, is Batman, but they are usually flawless, and they just stand around giving speeches to lesser men, to say that. At least that's my perspective on both companies. And yeah, I think the latter doesn't really work with a greater audience. They don't want to be speech to. They want to have a good time, and they want to see people or on screen struggling with the same things they are. They don't need to hear you're faulty and this is how you should live your life or do things. Show, don't tell. Taylor?
Yeah, and of course they're not gods, and if they fill these things with a bunch of Jesus imagery and a bunch of calling it these characters gods all the time, I'm already sick of that. Batman vs Superman alone had too much of that. Superman's not a god. He would never allow anyone to call him a god. He has all these powers because he's from another planet, and he respects them, and he loves and respects other people because he was raised by good parents in a good family. And he uses what he's learned in his life, both from his Kryptonian father by a DVD or whatever they left for him there, the files, and from his Earth father. So he's not even, and of course, even Superman's not perfect. No one is perfect. But he's not going around like, I'm a god and I will protect these ants when I feel like it, you know. No, he's a guy from Kansas.
Yeah, but that's not the way they have been showing.
Ability to help people.
But that's not the way they have been showing that on the big screen. I mean, well, in case of Superman, bad example because he actually killed his father by not saving him from a tornado. But anyway, Merv, I want to talk about the last part of my questions, and that's about the multiple platforms and multiple forms. I mean, you get movies, you get TV shows, you get animation, and the TV shows and animation probably will be on HBO Max. Not everybody has HBO Max because not everybody can afford it. Certainly not in this time and age. So, if you're going to develop characters over multiple platforms and over multiple forms, isn't that going to hurt your overarching universe in the end? Because at a certain moment, people will say, huh, when I last saw that character, he was like this, and now he's like this. What happened in between? Where did it happen? And only the fanboys like us will know because we watch everything because we don't have a social life. But people who have actual lives that mean something, yeah, I'm taking a dig at us. Will have absolutely no clue anymore. At least that's my fear. That's my main criticism of Marvel as well at the moment, because I know in my surroundings, not everybody's watching all those Disney Plus shows. So at a certain moment, people will get lost. Don't you agree, or you have a different view?
I absolutely agree. Just starting with the big question mark, which is if they're going to have multiple characters, or I'm sorry, multiple franchises of the same character running parallel to each other, like they're implying that they're going to have two Batmans. One's going to be the Batman franchise, and the other one's going to be the Brave and the Bold franchise. I assume they want it to be a franchise. As of right now, they've only announced one film. But that right there, we're going to be fine because we pay attention to this stuff like, other people do the weather. But I guarantee there's going to be people who hear, oh, there's a new Batman movie. And they're going to go in there and they're going to be like, where's Robert Pattinson? What happened to the cliffhanger from the last movie? Where'd Robin come from? Who's this guy? And it's just, they're going to be totally lost, and they're going to probably check out mentally, and because they're never going to they're not going to think about it and go home and like look it up. Oh, it's a different, franchise, and it's a whole different, this one's going in this direction, that one's going in this direction. Oh, I shouldn't have seen this. I should go see that. No, they're just going to check out. They're going to be like, it's too complicated and I'm done with it. I'm just going to go watch whatever. And that's just touching on the idea of running multiple characters in multiple film franchises that are the same character, essentially, because it's just absolutely going to be confusing for 99% of the people. And the other thing, when obviously I don't know exactly how much everything is going to tie together with everything else yet. But whenever you've got TV shows that are featuring like the Green Lanterns, for example, you have to imagine at some point they would make their appearance in films. Otherwise, why are you introducing them if it's going to be but if they're going to do that, then do you have to have an HBO Max subscription to understand the movie chronology? And that they've already dealt with that with the Disney Plus and the Marvel side of things. I hate that idea because it's at what point, you've got to go to all these different wells to get the information to fill the gaps in the story. I just don't have that much time. I don't have that much money. You know what I mean? Like, imagine if you had to go to every different streaming service just to get the next episode of a TV show. Like, I'm not going to do it. I'm just going to go find something else to do. And I think that's the big problem staring down, not just this, but obviously this, but all these streaming services that are trying to use multiple platforms to tell a connected story. They're going to try to bite off more than they can chew. And I think it's gonna immediately backfire almost. I just don't see it panning out. I don't see people sticking around and buying in if they don't absolutely have to. So I hate the idea that I want to like the shows. I want to say that, I can like these shows and they're fine. But if you have to see the show to understand a movie that you're going to see, then it's a lot of work. And at what, if it starts to feel too much like work, too much like homework, like I have to go see this before I can go see that, then I'm not going to be interested. And I think most people would kind of have that same reaction.
Mm-hmm. And
So
the
I
risk
think
is they also said we have animated shows as well, and not everybody who is into comic book movies or comic book movie series shows or whatever you want to call them is also into animation and has the patience to watch it. And it's nice they're using the same actors. At least that's for the most part what they announced. But um, are you gonna follow like, okay, I've seen Waller, and now this and this character from Waller is gonna show up in an animated show along the road, and then later in a movie, and then Waller season 2, and then another animated show, and then another movie. I'm gonna guarantee you that at a certain moment, those characters, people will say, "What? No, I'm not gonna go anymore."
Well, it's absolutely going to happen because the what did Taylor call them? Couch Commandos. The Creature Commandos are a team started by Amanda Waller. So I guarantee her animated character is going to be in Creature Commandos, and it's going to probably be the same character that is in the Waller show, and potentially Suicide Squad and whatever else. She's the Peacemaker, and it's just I shouldn't have to check out all these different things to understand the story. So I can see that being problematic almost immediately. Just the convoluted nature of this kind of storytelling, and it's why I'm trying to come into it with the mindset of, am I interested in this one project as opposed to these 8 projects that are all interconnected? If I like this one project, I'm going to focus on that one. And if it tells me they're connected to other ones, then I'll pay attention then. But if I can't enjoy it on its own, I'm almost to the point in general, not just with the DC or whatever. But if I can't enjoy it on its own, I almost don't even want to watch it, because I don't want it to be the next episode of, an 18-year-long television series.
Mm. I'm gonna go quickly to Taylor, but then I really want Lord Deathman's take on this.
Yeah, no, I agree with Merv. One, doing the different platforms is risky, and MCU is doing that, taking that risk right now as well. And jury's still out on how well it's actually going to work out. But with the having different Batmans and different universes and other characters, one of the problems we've had, or we're at right now, is the DC fandom is extremely fractured. And by doing this, you almost keep it fractured. There's almost no reason. You can pick and choose. You can just watch the Elseworlds Batman and hate the other stuff, without watching it, because you've got a choice now. So I don't think it's achieving the goal of bringing the fandom back together, even for the people that pay attention to this stuff. And the people that don't pay close attention, like Merv covered that completely. They're not going to know what's going on. Oh, and one more thing, quick. I've seen some people online talking about how some of these things are almost certainly going to be R-rated, but that's not a problem, because if you move those R-rated characters into a PG-13 movie with Superman, they just don't swear, and they don't have the graphic violence. That, of course, misses the whole point, though. If it's a unified story, half, 2/3 of the audience for that PG-13 movie hasn't seen the other half of the story that was R-rated, so they're not going to know what's going on.
Yeah, absolutely. That was my critique on having Deadpool in MCU R-rated as well, because you're gonna lose part of the fandom that is not gonna be able to watch everything in your universe, and that's always a risk. I mean, Lord Deathman, I'm going to you now. The MCU already has like a critique on the shows that, well, especially She-Hulk. I will just bring it up. It waters down the quality of the Marvel universe. Putting out so much, have it over multiple platforms, multiple forms. will the DCU stumble at the get-go?
Yeah. This is a tough one, and I have to say that Taylor and Merv had some great comments that really, they're challenging me. They're forcing me to reevaluate my thinking, because I've always thought that what Marvel has achieved with the shared universe concept and how beautifully it's been executed, I've been thinking it's the greatest thing since sliced bread. So I'll be honest about that. Has the Disney Plus shows really introduced like a dilution of that? I want to say yes and no. Pumping out this kind of stuff by volume automatically means that the quality of it is going to drop to a certain degree. But I do think that there's still, I still think that there is room to have these stories told across different medium. As long as you don't make it mandatory that you have to ingest all of this content in order to understand some kind of a story. So I guess what I want to say is that I would be okay if all of this DC stuff could somehow live in the same continuity, even if the fact that it's all happening in the same place doesn't mean that there's one overarching story that's connecting all of it. And if I miss this TV show, I'm not going to understand the story. In a perfect world, the Disney Plus shows would be an expansion of what happened in between two moments. So you take a character from a movie and say, oh, you know what? Here's a 10-episode show about that character. And maybe it happened in between this thing and this thing. And you could watch that show or you could not watch that show. It's totally up to you. I know I'm not supposed to be talking about Marvel here. This is strictly about DC. But the last thing that I want to say about this in with regards to Marvel is that when you open up Disney Plus and you go to the Marvel section and you take a look at it, what you see is a really impressive tapestry of movies, television shows. The one thing I think everyone's, kind of not focusing on is that it all ends up in the same place at the end of the day. Disney Plus is warehousing all of this Marvel content. So if you don't see it at opening night on the movies, God forbid, that Black Panther Wakanda Forever just came out 2 days ago on Disney Plus. And now I can kind of pursue the whole story of the MCU at my leisure. But getting to DC and Gunn's more pointed plans to tell a story through a video game and then an animated show and then a movie and then perhaps a TV show. In the case of DC, it's extremely misguided to the point of absurdity. And that's really because of the shockingly different tones you have across all of these different DC properties. Marvel has a house style, and I think they have kind of one, I don't want to say one tone, but they have a tone that has a temperature. It kind of goes up and then it goes down, but it's always around the same neighborhood. But you're going to get R-rated stuff out of the DCU. You're going to get, I guess, family-friendly stuff is going to be there. Then there's some people who are staunchly against the idea of watching a cartoon under any circumstances. You could call it anime, whatever you want. They're just not interested in drawings that are animated and move around the screen. So those people are already gone if your story is going to go into a quote-unquote cartoon. Video games, you've lost video is popular and as much money as they make, you will have certainly lost a bunch of people who just aren't into video games and don't want to spend X amount of dollars on a console to possibly follow some story that happened from a movie. The more I hear us talk about it, the more I listen to what's being said, DC might be better off just doing these movies as one-offs. And I'm going to have to stand on that platform. Maybe there just is no connected continuity. Maybe there is no overarching story. Maybe they just should put out one movie about a character, then do another one and another one and another one. And it doesn't have to go anywhere. And they can take their chances the same way they always have since the beginning of their live action, sort of introduction. But that's my thinking on the lack of connectedness or what it sounds like James Gunn wants to do in terms of connectedness.
Yeah, Murph.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out that I've had this issue with the multiple almost platform storytelling in the comics as well. I'll never forget. It was like my first gripe with comics when I was in the mid '90s. I was a kid. I was collecting X-Men comics, Uncanny X-Men, and it was leading up to the Onslaught epic. Onslaught was a big villain. It was leading up to it, and then the next issue they were eating pancakes and getting ready to buy Christmas presents, and I was like, "What happened?" Well, here they told the bulk of the Onslaught story in its own separate limited series that I had to buy. And I'm 12 years old. I don't have any money. And I'm like, I was immediately put out, and I stopped collecting comic books for like 15 years because of that. Because I was like, I don't have $1 million to spend on comics. I'm mowing yards for $1 at a time. I can afford this one comic. I thought that although my whole story would be in here, and here all the good parts are in this other one, and I get like the breakfast after talking about how their battle went. And I'm like, yeah, I was just immediately perturbed. And I really don't want that to be the case for these movies and TV shows where it feels like you're missing something.
Hmm. So overall, we can conclude that we are happy they are making a plan. That's good. We are happy that at least they have some guy overseeing what's going on. But we do have some doubts with how and what they're doing. Well, let's hope James Gunn and Peter Safran know what they're doing. What made me happy, at least, was that they said that the vision of the directors and the writers is important and should shine through the projects they put out, and that storytelling is key. Those are good premises, and well, let's hope that they make good on their word. And yeah, we'll have to wait and see until 2025 how it's going to turn out. That will conclude this edition of the Podcast of Champions. We hope you have enjoyed our discussion today. If you did, you can help us out by liking, sharing, and subscribing to our YouTube channel. And if you really want more of us, you can join our forum at sakar.freeforums.net. We love it if you join us. Be on the lookout for new review series that are coming your way. Secret Invasion, Mandalorian Season 3, they will be on the list. We're going to do a movie review for Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania, pretty soon. And of course, we will be back with a brand new podcast as well at some point. What will be the topic? We don't know. Will it be DC? Could very well be. For now, I thank you all, and also on behalf of our champions, we wish you to be safe and be well. Bye.